Hello and welcome to this episode of the Growing Up is Overrated podcast. My name is Jen, and I'm here with my friend and co-host, T. This week, we will be discussing family expectations. As we grow older, we gain more responsibility, and that comes with a whole lot of expectations from others and ourselves. During family gatherings, it tends to be the worst. So it's time to talk about this. Now, into the podcast.
Welcome back, Jen. How's it going?
Oh, going.
Going good.
Yeah, just continuing to live my life, wake up in bed, walk to my desk, sit down, do work, walk back to my bed, sleep.
Sounds like the 2020 life. I'm cozied up with my Christmas candle. It's snowy outside, and I'm ready to talk about some family expectations that I'm pretty happy I don't have to deal with this year, probably, for the most part. Because we're not really doing anything for the holidays. But in a normal year, you would go to a holiday event, and me especially, because I have a larger family with lots of cousins and aunts and uncles. Going to those events and like dreading it because you just know all of the questions that are just loaded up in all of their minds. And I always have major anxiety before family events, no matter how much I want to actually see all of the family members.
Just like trying to catch up with you, but it means that it's like, oh, I don't want to answer all these questions about what I'm doing with my life.
Right, like they really have like good intentions. Like they're like, "Well, I haven't talked to you in a while." You're like, "Okay, yeah, I understand that. But also, you're stressing me out." Like I don't want to talk about what my next steps are because I'm living right now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm trying to reach those goals, but I haven't reached them yet, and you're just reminding me that I haven't gotten there.
Right. Yeah, like I was chatting with another friend about this a little bit yesterday, and we were just talking about how so like this starts back in like high school, right? Like so you start
Mm-hmm.
thinking about what am I going to do after high school? And she's been helping out in like kind of like a youth group sort of thing. And so one of her like high schoolers that she's been working with posted something that was like um whenever you're down, like look at how happy you're or how proud 5 years ago you would be of you now. And I'm like, okay, that works when you're like a teenager because like good teenager growth, you know? But like in your 20s, you just like have this like expectation of yourself and what you're going to do by X age. Um like this timeline that like everyone imagines for themselves and for others is can be really incriminating.
I'm thinking like 5 years ago, me would have expected that I would have moved out by now. And so
Yes, exactly.
if I saw that I was still living at home, I think I'd be really sad, actually.
Yeah, like it's it it's pretty upsetting that you would, like yeah, like 21-year-old me would be like, "Man, like I thought you would have probably like been getting married at least by now or at least engaged and have your own apartment, have lived with roommates and maybe even be in a master's program." But like those those timelines as you get older, you adjust them if you haven't met them, so like now my expectations of myself as a 26-year-old like or really they were my like 24, 25-year-old goals are now more my 30, 31-year-old goals. Like you know like it's just kind of interesting how you have to push them forward. But
Yeah, that's one thing that I've really learned as I've progressed. I'm still in my very early 20s at 22, so I still got a long way to go. But something that I've learned more since being in my 20s is that the timeline that everybody thinks a 20-year-old should have is just not realistic.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work that way. And you have to accept that that is the case. And maybe you're going to have to push some things down the line, especially these days with the whole pandemic situation that is really
Yeah.
pushing a lot of people's goals even further away.
Right. Yeah, that's, like, I think why it was really tough in the beginning was the morning of, like, what was going to be what were your accomplishments going to be this year? You never know. But it doesn't matter because, you know, you can't change it, so, um
I mean, I look back at this year, I graduated college this year. I thought that I would be
Mhm.
doing so much with my life right now. And it's not that I'm not doing anything, I do have a job in my field and I'm working, but it's like I'm still living at home. I never got to do a graduation ceremony, all those things. It's like that make me sad. But then
We
again,
did
like
one for
I've
you in AC.
that's true. We did do one in Animal Crossing, which was pretty awesome. but but yeah, it's not the same. But you
Yeah,
know,
it's not.
but it's okay. I'm moving on. I'll get to where I want to be in life. It's just gonna take longer. But like I remember
Yeah.
being back in high school and like these topics tend to circle around four major things in life. You get questions about college, your job, marriage, and kids. Those four things, in that order, are generally
Ye
what you get questions
yeah.
about.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
I've only really reached the first two. I've gotten college and job questions because I haven't been in a serious relationship. But I
Right.
remember being in high school and having going to my grandparents' nursing home. And bless them, I love my grandparents, but they had forgetful memories. So
Yeah.
every time I would go and talk to them, they would be like, "Where are you going to college?" Even though just the last time I told them that I haven't made a decision and I will tell them when I make one. So it was
Yeah.
just every single time was a repeat of the same expectations and me being like, "I'm not ready to tell you yet."
I mean, if they forgot that often, you could have told them a different college every time.
See, but the thing was I was always worried they would remember sometime and then and then call me out on it later.
You could be like, "Actually, I changed my decision."
Yeah,
It's
but
fu
I just
it
decided to tell them the truth and be like, "I'm
Yeah.
not ready to tell you yet." And it was just and they would forget how old I was too. So they'd start asking me when I was like 15,
Uh-huh.
and I'd be like, "Okay, guys, I'm a sophomore in high school. I'm not gonna know yet." Like,
Yeah.
and then
Good
once I
yeah.
got into college, it was, "When are you graduating college?" It's like, "I just started, guys."
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, so, yeah, I had a really hard time deciding where I was gonna go to for college because I was trying to get recruited for volleyball, and so that was, like, a whole 'nother layer of complication to the whole thing, um, and so I didn't realize that I should have started that whole process when I was a sophomore, um, and my coaches were not helping me like they should have, and so, like, it was basically just me and my mom, and we, like, paid some person with the NCAA to, like, help recruit, but in the end, it just, like, we couldn't find a school or I think I wasn't daring enough to be applying for certain schools and asking people from, like, fancy universities to be seeing me, when I was playing, and so I ended up, like, not getting anybody to, be able to pay me scholarship money to go to their school.
Mhm.
So that was, like, really hard for me to give up that dream, but in the end, I'm really glad that I decided to go to community college for my first few years and then transferred to a larger university later, because I think it really was the stepping stones that I needed from my public high school, which it wasn't a bad high school experience, like, I think I did learn a decent amount, but I was pretty far behind in a lot of skills, and I kind of needed that, like, baby step into what does it mean to be in college, before I went to the university, so, I mean, I cried a lot about that decision, and hearing people ask me that constantly was just absolutely anxiety inducing, And then you get into college and they're just like, hey, when are you graduating? When are you done? When are you
Mhm.
gonna? And it's just like, can I not enjoy this moment right now?
Yeah, why do I have to constantly be planning for something? Like, I didn't have a recruiting experience because I don't sports. I'm bad at sportsing.
No
Um,
sportsing.
but I did have an issue where I was really torn between going to school for a technical field, specifically video game design. I wanted to go to school for video game design, which I didn't end up doing. But I wanted to do that, and on the other hand, I wanted to go for history. And those are 2 very different types of schools that you apply
Yeah.
for. And
Yeah.
so I got into technical schools and I got into liberal arts schools, and I was like, "I don't know what to do." Like, so, like, for that whole senior year, I was just stuck between 2 different directions in life. And I ended up picking a school that was somewhat in the middle that I could do both, but I agonized over it because I knew that if
Yeah.
I didn't pick a technical school, then the odds of me being a really technical person and getting, like, a really good job after college were much lowered, and I knew that
Yeah.
would be a big decision in my life, and so I really agonized over it, and then everybody asking me just made it worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's not helpful, like it's like I understand you're curious and you want to know everything about what's going on with me, but you know, when I can't figure out what college to go to, or I'm applying to jobs but not really getting lots of bites, or not getting anything to come to fruition, um or like maybe you're having relationship issues and people are poking at that and it just hurts, like it's just, or maybe you can't have kids, like when they start asking about kids and you're having fertility issues or you've had miscarriages, like these are just things that people aren't thinking when they're asking these questions, and they're it's inconsiderate without them trying to be inconsiderate, right? Like they mean well, but it's just not helpful to a lot of people, especially if you're not close enough for them to really share those intimate details.
Yeah, it's difficult because you don't wanna deal with telling them no, because you're right, they do care. They they care about you, and they wanna know what's going on in your life, but sometimes when they ask questions, they inadvertently cause you stress. And
Right.
so, typically, it's just better for them to not ask and have you tell them what's going on. If they ask you a basic question of like, "Hey, what's going on in your life?" That is not so
Yes.
bad to answer. It's when they get into specifics that is
Yeah.
annoying.
I can't remember the name of the audiobook, but it was I back in college I was listening to this audiobook that was like um how to be better at talking to strangers or something like that. Like, and one of the concepts that she was talking about was like many people do not want to talk about their work when you're at a party, right? Like they're partying, they're not trying to talk about work. um and so like if you, instead of being like, what do you do for work, like, maybe the coroner doesn't want to say what they do for work, or the cop, or um and so the better question to ask is really like, what's interesting you these days, or like what, um you know like, I mean, what have you been up to is an okay question, I guess. Um, but sometimes what are you up to feels a little loaded also. Like it feels like they're getting ready to ask some of these hard-hitting questions. I don't know if you feel that, but
I don't know. I'm pretty good at avoiding telling people things that I don't want them to know. But I can see how "What are you up to?" might feel a little bit like, "Oh, I need to come up with something impressive to tell them what I'm up to."
right, yeah, well, I've been sitting around with my dog and doing job apps. Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y yeah, I don't have a large family, but one thing that I do have is I have these family friends that I see every year in the summer. Not this summer because stuff, but most summers I see them. And to me, they're like my extended family. We catch up for a week every year, and they always ask me things like, "What are you doing? What internships are you doing?" And the worst is they always offer to help. And like I appreciate that they want to help me, but it always makes me
Yeah,
feel a little bit like I don't want to need your help, you know? It's not that
I
I don't appreciate them
totally get
wanting to help
that.
me, but I
Yeah.
don't want them to have to help me for me to succeed.
Right. Yeah, like there's something I have a big chip on my shoulder about like wanting to do things myself and my way because I'm the baby, the only girl, like the you know, main like the only college graduate, like
Mhm.
it's just all of those things kind of add up to me wanting to be like Miss Independent and it ends up being making it harder for me to have calm conversations with especially the older people in my family um because I just like I'm like I don't want your help or like I'm not telling you this because I want advice, and I think I understand why like you know why people want to give advice, but the thing is that it's just not usually why people are telling you a story about their life. Like they're like unless somebody says, "What do you think?" then like just assume they're not asking for advice. Like
Mhm.
and that's hard for everybody. Like I have to really think about it sometimes because I just want to help everybody, but not everybody wants help all the time.
Yeah, I find that that's a common problem. It's mostly I've noticed a guy problem, not that there are just because women tend to be more empathetic, in the way that they were raised, and they notice people's emotions more. And I just noticed that sometimes when I come to guys about my problems, they're just like, "Oh, well, have you tried XYZ?" And it's like, "I'm
Yeah.
not coming to you for you to tell me how you would solve my problem. I want you to listen to me complain and
Yeah,
offer support."
yeah, that's really challenging for a lot of men. Um and so like I have started to preface things to the men in my life with I just need to gripe about this for a second. I don't need you to fix it. you
Mhm.
know, like maybe tomorrow I'll ask you to fix it, but not today.
Not right now. I am
yeah.
not looking for you for your advice right now. I just want you to be there while I complain and listen to me.
Right. Like, yeah.
Mhm.
I okay, so I don't think you've been to a lot of weddings if I remember correctly.
No, I've only been in one, and that was, like, over 10 years ago.
Right, and you were like little, you were
Yeah.
small.
Yeah, I was small.
I was but yeah, like at this age if you go to a wedding, people will ask, "So, you're next, huh?" Like or something like that and you're like, "Can you not? Thank you." Like like I I get such a serious I get such a serious face on when people ask me that. I'm just like, "Uh, actually, I'm focusing on my career right now." Like, like, "Actually, I wanna, do research and, like, be an academic." Imagine that, a woman doesn't wanna, like, jump into this stuff, like, right now. Like, you know, like,
Ugh.
it it's a conveyor belt, honestly, and my dad and I talk about this all the time, that, like, once you're, like, 17, 18, everyone puts you on this conveyor belt, and they're like, "Yes, you will, receive all of these things at the same time." And the issue with that is we're all individuals. We all experience different things at different times and, have different priorities and interests. Um, and, like the cookie cutter mentality just does not work because humans are not cookie cutter. We're not gingerbread men, like made out of your cookie cutters. So,
Want
I
gingerbread.
just, yeah, yeah, I'll probably make a gingerbread house soon. Gonna recreate my Animal Crossing house.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's really frustrating. And okay, here's another one of my issues with this is I don't know if it's a generational thing or not. And I don't say that to be like some sort of like boomer hater or like, it's our generation versus your generation, because I honestly don't really love that too much. Um, but I do wonder if, because of the way that many boomers were brought up, if possibly um it might be a product of um just how the 50s were, um like an idea of everybody has to be perfect and like clean cut at dinner time and all of these things. And I don't know, like, it's just so interesting to me how they rebelled against it, but then are now flipping it onto millennials and Gen Z. Um in general, like, obviously, like, not everybody's the same. Caveat there.
Yeah.
But, like, it's just really interesting to me to see each generation grow up and, like, how they change their direction as far as what they believe life, like, is meant to be.
Always been interesting to me, not to make this too much into a generational discussion. But the boomers are particularly interesting in that they went through the whole 60s and 70s and had a lot of fun. And then the 80s, they stopped having fun. um, and
Yeah.
then they like went down. Like generations, younger people tend to be more radical than older people. And then
Yes.
as you age, you get less and less radical. And that's normal. That's typical. So
Yeah, it's settling down.
yeah, it's taking your big youthful dreams and pulling them back to reality a little bit, which even now I experience as I'm a millennial Gen Z cusp baby. I don't really know where I belong,
Yeah.
but I notice it already in myself and that I've become more of a realist as I've gotten older than I was when I was a teenager. And that's normal, I think, to experience.
Yeah, I think it's really, part of it is your brain, like, finishing being developed. As someone who now has a fully developed brain,
Ha.
um, that was, like, such a nerd out moment when I turned 26 and I was like, "My brain is officially developing." Um, but, yeah, I think that's definitely why you experience so much growth in the first part of your 20s. Um, even just from birth until, like, 25, I feel like there's a lot of changing that goes on.
Mhm.
Um, and it's on so many different levels in your brain and your body, but that's another thing. But, like, your brain just changes so much, and the way that it, like, processes abstract thought and all of that, I think really plays a big part into how you process those, like those kinds of abstract concepts of, like, realism and what is actually possible right now. You know what I mean? Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
That's, like, really, like, layman's terms of, like, basic level, but yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I've heard a lot of people talking about boundaries specifically over the last couple years. Boundary talk has been a really, really big conversation. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't know how much you've heard people talking about boundaries, but to me, it seems like every time I turn around, I hear another YouTuber talking about, I had to set more boundaries with this family member or with,
Yeah,
whatever.
I've definitely heard that a lot, where it's just the idea of, I don't need to share everything with everybody or interact with everybody the same way. And just because I'm forced to interact with a person doesn't mean that I have to be extremely friendly with that person.
Yeah, or even just like, just because they're your family member doesn't mean you owe them an explanation of everything you're doing in your life, which I think is really hard, especially when it comes to parents and grandparents, like people who raised us. Like, you kind of feel like you owe them something. Um, and I don't know, like, it's hard because, you love them regardless of, you know, any nuances and issues you may have. But there are circumstances where, like, you know, maybe I don't need to talk about my relationships with my mom, or like like that's not everyone's case, of course. It's just an example. But, like, there's just certain conversations that as you grow older, you learn that you don't need to talk about with certain people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard because you love them and you want to explain to them what's going on. But I don't know. It's really challenging, the boundaries piece of this all.
Mm-hmm. And it's also hard not to let the opinions of your family influence your decisions in a way that doesn't make you happy necessarily. Like when I was
Yeah.
in college, I initially went into university thinking that I would study political science and or history. That was my plan. So I decided against the tech schools. I went to my university and was like, I'm going to do this. And then my parents were like, why don't you take a computer science class? Just take one. You liked it in high school. You don't have to continue on with it. Just take one. So I was like, fine. So in the spring semester of my first year, I took a computer science class and I did pretty well. My parents were like, well, why don't you double major in computer science? And I was like, I don't know if I really want to. Like if I do that, it's going to be basically my entire college career is going to be my major, which was American Studies. I decided, which is sort of history, sort of political science. It's complicated, but I chose American Studies, and if I did a double major with computer science, that would be my entire college career. I would have time for nothing else. But my parents were like, "Do that. It's a good investment in your job," and I was like, "Fine." So I did both the double majors, and it's not necessarily that I regret that, but I do regret having my parents have so much power over what I decided to do in school. I was like, I should have stood up for
Yeah.
more of what I wanted to do. And I mean, like, it's not necessarily a bad thing because I have a job with coding right now and I do enjoy it relatively. Like I'm good at it, it's fun, but I'm just not sure if I made the right decision with letting my parents have so much influence over that.
Yeah, I get that. I think, yeah, I had, I guess, kind of a similar experience. Like, people, I don't know. So I went first into school as like, yeah, I love art. I wanna be an art manager. So I was like learning art history and stuff, and then I was like, no, I think I want to be the artist. I don't know. And I was really like telling myself what I wanted to do, but every once in a while I would allow my brother to kind of talk me into trying something like web development, or just something like a little bit more practical for today's world and like a little bit less of a dream career.
Mhm.
And I was just like, and I always felt like it was kind of like throwing me off track, like, and distracting me. But I mean, in the end, I guess, like, I learned what I didn't like, what I didn't want to do, and that's sometimes just as valuable as learning what you do want to do. Um,
don't
but
want I
yeah.
don't want what I said to come off bad against my parents because I do think that they
No,
had
yeah,
my
yeah,
best
yeah.
interest in mind, like, I was good at coding, I'm still good
Yes.
at it, and it's a reliable career path, like, it was probably a good choice in the long run,
Yes. Yeah, I
but I
think
think back to it and I'm like, "Okay, did I let them influence me so much and not really listen to what my heart was telling me to do, but also was that a good thing because my heart was telling me to do something that would have been much harder to get a career with?
yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, from what it sounds like, I think that you made a really good decision, and I think, like, you're lucky because your parents have, like, a good idea of, like, what the real world is like a little bit more, than, like, I feel like, I love my parents, like, I'm not throwing shade at them, I'm not being ungrateful for anything that they've given me, but, like, you know, they they didn't go to college, and so they didn't really know that life and like what good college moves are. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it is challenging to be able to segment other people's opinions from your own. Because like I've had so many people tell me um that, oh, you like art and you like psychology, you should be an art therapist. And I'm like, dude, I don't, you know, I don't think that that's like what I'm trying to do. Like I'm not trying to marry them together. you know I I like art and I like psychology. They don't need to be together as one thing, you know?
Yeah, I get that a lot, actually, with my two majors of American Studies and Computer Science. People are like, "Oh, what do you want to do to use both of those?" And I'm like, "I don't really need to use both of them in the one thing. I
Yeah,
can just use one."
right.
It's not like I don't need to use them both.
Yeah. Like, yeah, people would be like, "Oh, art, good luck." I actually had people say, "Oh, good luck with that." Like, in, like, a really, like, incriminating tone. I'm like, "Excuse you." "Thank you." But, yeah, and then, like, when my dream was that I was going to become, like, some, like, trailblazer in the education world and was gonna, like, turn public schooling upside down and do, like, education reform and all of this, like, I would tell people that, "Oh, yeah, I wanna go in education policy," and they'd be like, "Oh, man, someone has to do that," and I'm like, "Thanks for the great response." Like, and every time that happened, I would just be like, well, first I'd be like, "Well, screw you." And then the second, I'd be like, "Wait, but are they right?" And so then it's just, like, putting that doubt in your head, and you're like, "Should I not be doing this? I don't know, I'm already pretty far into it." But, um, I don't know, in the end, I think that, I made decisions that were right for me in the moment, and, um, currently, it's setting me up to make different choices than maybe I would've if I went another road, but, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I think that more Americans need to be okay with just, like, um or people in general, I'm not really sure about other places, but, like, more people need to be okay with, just letting the waves come to them and dealing with them as they come, you know?
I totally agree with that. Trying not to set too many expectations for yourself or taking too many expectations from family and putting that pressure on yourself because you don't have to.
Yeah, I don't know. Um I just don't like having people put expectations on each other, like, it's really not fair. I mean, it's natural human, you know, way, but
Mhm.
it's just, I think that we can work to be better. Um,
Totally
so,
agree.
I mean,
So,
I guess that goes into just, like, putting on your armor when you go into these situations where you're going to have, um, people giving those expectations on you. Um, and part of that is just knowing your canned story. Um, that's like a thing my dad has told me many times because he was like a late married bachelor. And so he dealt with these questions a lot. Um, and so he's like, you need to know your story for all of these issues. So, um, any of them that apply, college, job, marriage, kids. Have a canned answer for all of them and just memorize it. It's your elevator pitch. There you go. So you can just memorize it, throw it at people, and leave, you know, or move on to another conversation. Um,
like that idea. Just have a
yeah.
prepared answer.
Yep, just have a prepared answer, and then they can yeah, it's just like an interview, I guess. You can kind of think of it as.
I don't want to pull back to interviews.
I'm
No.
sorry, it's my life.
No.
No.
All right. With that, I think now is a good time to move on to our silver lining section this week. So, T, what is making you happy right now?
I am so excited because in Animal Crossing, the love of my life, game-wise, blankets of snow have covered everything. And it's beautiful, and we can make snowmen, well, snow boys. And I threw a birthday party for mine. He had little. He asked for no candles, but I said I don't care. But yeah, it was just
put
fun
candles
because
next to a snowman.
He's fine. I haven't checked. I'll check on him later today. I don't know. But it actually snowed in real life here the same day, and so it was like I love when the weather just like matches up like that.
Yes, I do too. That's so great. I'm also very excited about snow and Animal Crossing. It just changes the whole vibe of the place. And we're going to be getting some Toy Day / Christmas decorations very soon, so I'm hyped about that. I am very happy this week about finally we put up our Christmas tree and add Christmas lights to it. So we're getting there. My family takes a really long time to decorate. In fact, we're probably going to be decorating a little bit today. But I love getting the lights on the tree because it adds such a wonderful glow to the room when they're on and the rest of the lights are off. It's one of my favorite things about the season.
It's so whimsical. I love it.
It's so great. So thanks for listening to this week's episode. Our next episode will be premiering on January 5th instead of our usual 2-week schedule to give us some time off for the holidays, which we both really need. Please subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps us out. We hope you'll continue to listen to us talk about our lives and hopefully learn something about yourself too. Have a wonderful holiday season, whatever you celebrate. And remember, growing up is overrated.